You ever been at the top of the universe? I'm gonna say it. What's up, fam? What's happening? L.A.R. movement still moving. Subscribe or die trying. I'm looking kind of workout fly right now. You see the thumbnail. Were you raised by a momster? I think I heard I am shy leukemia call somebody a momster. So I think that's where I got it from. Unless I just misheard what she said. And and I was like, yeah, that sounds good. But were you raised by a mother who is a monster? Because a lot of us don't want to talk about that. Like, you know, when you think about the Precious character, that's a momster. When you think about the mother from, I forget which, I think it's Tyler Perry Family Reunion, that's a momster. I think when you think about the other one, when you know, it's another Daddy's Little Girl, that's a momster, right? Were you raised by a mother who made it their priority to sabotage your life? And they got joy out of that. That's a momster. You know, were you raised by the type of woman who who alienated you from your other parent or your other parent side of the family? Then you were raised by a momster. You know what I'm saying? Were you a child who was taught to be disrespectful to authority or to adults unless they were women or the women in your family? Then you were raised by a momster. You know what I'm saying? Were you raised by a person who didn't teach you skills to be successful in life, but always threw you out to the wolves and made you fend for yourself? Then you were raised by a momster. You know, if you were raised by a woman who lied about their situation and your upbringing and how the situation that you find is your normal life came to be, because it was all based on a lie, because, you know, basically you're living with the consequences of your mom's actions, but she doesn't want to, you know, say that. And she made up a whole little story that isn't true to make you feel a certain way. You were raised by a momster because you're living a lie, you know. If you were raised by a mother who didn't care about your health, in a sense of they sat you in front of a television and fed you a bunch of snacks and sugary foods, and you wind up being overweight as a child, not because you were just a big kid, but because you were unhealthy. Like, you were overweight, you were out of shape, you were unhealthy, you had diabetes, you know, maybe you wind up with asthma that came from all of this stuff that you did, that you were given to eat to pacify you. You were raised by a momster. You know what I'm saying? If you were raised in one of those households where you were introduced to sex at an early age, violence at an early age, drugs at an early age, and nobody had a problem with that, then you were raised by a momster. You know, you were raised by a momster. If your mother used you for money, you were a check. You know, your mother loved you until the check ran out. And when the check ran out, she had nothing else to do with you. Then you were raised by a momster. You see what I'm saying? If you were raised by a mom who didn't care what you did, you know, at all, like you never got disciplined, you never got talked to, you never got straightened out, you never got they applauded you when you did the wrong things and disrespected you when you did the right things. So you were confused. You were raised by a momster. You see what I'm saying? If you were raised to put, you know, to be in the sisterhood and feminism, if you're raised to be a feminist or a male feminist, you know, thus, you know, having men and boys as your enemy at an early age. So you created an enemy where one actually didn't exist, and there's a fallout from that. You were raised by a momster. If you were raised by a mother who was they're the adult in the situation, but they raised you, with guilt because they were a failure in life. So it's your responsibility to get them the life that they deserve because they wouldn't work for it themselves. So now you as a child has this extra pressure on your back to produce, not just to get yourself out of the situation, but to get your mom out of the situation. You were raised by a momster. You see what I'm saying? So you got to ask these questions. If you were raised by a mom who was by a momster who was raised by a momster, and now you think normalcy is crazy, it's generational. You were raised by a momster. So when you go out into the world, ask yourself a question. Was I raised by a mom or was I raised by a momster? Because there are too many of us out here who were raised by momsters, and some of these momsters decided they got old and now they trying to get in heaven and now they going to church and now they praying to God and all this, that, and the third. But if you, like this, before I go, if you were raised with a mom who was a momster at an early age and then changed their life but never fixed any of the damage, you were raised by a momster. So like, share, subscribe, or die trying. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.